Let's solve the IELTS reading academic passage from Cambridge Book 18, Test 2. The title is An Ideal City, which means a perfect city. Ahead of its time means something was very modern or advanced compared to the period it was created in. The subtitle means that Leonardo da Vinci's idea of a perfect city was much more advanced than the cities that existed during his lifetime. First, we have true, false, not given questions. These questions are in the same order as the information in the text. Here's a step by step strategy that works. Look for location keywords, find the tentative location in the passage, read the question carefully, and figure out the answer. Use this formula. If all parts of the question are true, it's true. If even one part of the question is false, it's false. And if even one part of the question is not given, the answer is not given. The location keywords from the questions are in bold. From these, we can see that the answers are from paragraphs 1 to 4. Let's start with question 27. People first referred to Leonardo da Vinci as a genius 500 years ago. What this means is, people called him a genius. He was called a genius for the first time 500 years ago. If both these points are true, then the answer is true. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 1, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. Here's a quick tip for reading. Sometimes you see big words that start with a capital letter. This usually means they are proper nouns or names, so you can ignore them when trying to understand the basic meaning. Focus on them only if they are directly asked in the question. For example, Renaissance man just means a type of man from that period. It's not in the question, so you don't need to worry about it. And this is simply the name of a place in France. I won't even try to pronounce it. This says the name genius was associated with Da Vinci, or he was referred to as a genius. Then it says that he died in his home 500 years ago. 500 years have nothing to do with when he was called a genius first. The first point from the question is true. He was called a genius. The second point, when was he called a genius for the first time? We don't know. The information is not given in the passage. Maybe he was called a genius for the first time 500 years ago, maybe before, maybe after. This is not given. So the answer to question 27 is not given. Question 28 is, the current climate crisis is predicted to cause more deaths than plague. Current means now. Predicted to means something that we expect will happen in future. The question is saying people died because of plague in the past. Prediction is people will die in future because of climate crisis. More people will die because of climate crisis. So we look for how many people died because of plague, how many people may die because of climate crisis, and which number is more. This is where we found the answer to the previous question. Plague and climate crisis are mentioned in the next paragraph, the second paragraph. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 2, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. The first sentence says that the plague spread in the 14th century and it caused 200 million deaths. Then it says climate crisis is predicted to cause deaths. Let's compare this to the points in the question. Plague caused 200 million deaths. How many deaths will climate crisis cause? We don't know. It is not given. So we cannot compare. Because the information is not given, the answer to question 28 is not given. Moving on to question 29. Some of the challenges we face today can be compared to those of earlier times. Challenges are problems or difficulties. The question is saying there were some problems in the past and there are some problems today. And the two can be compared, or the two problems are similar in some way. We found the answer to question 28 in the second paragraph. It mentions two challenges. The challenge of the present is climate crisis, and the challenge of the past is the plague. The last sentence is important. It says that for both the plague and climate crisis, radical solutions or strong changes are required. So, this sentence is comparing the two challenges, which means the two challenges can be compared. The answer to question 29 is true. Question 30. Leonardo da Vinci's ideal city was constructed in the 15th century. We just need to find when the ideal city was built, 15th century or not. 1401 to 1500 is the 15th century. This is an important concept for this question. 15th century is mentioned before this and after as well. So you could make the mistake of looking for the answer in the wrong place if you don't know this. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 3, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. An important reading tip: these are dashes. The information between dashes is additional details. So if you find it difficult and the sentence is long, cross out the part between dashes. Understand the rest of the sentence first. Then understand the part between the dashes if it is relevant to the question. Here we have crossed out the parts between the dashes because they are not relevant to the question. It says around 1486, that is the 15th century, Leonardo thought about urban planning. That is, he thought about planning a city. Then he began to work on the city project, which would remain unfulfilled. Remain unfulfilled means it was not completed. So, in the 15th century, he began to work on the project of the ideal city. But the ideal city project remained unfulfilled. That is, it was not constructed. The question is about when it was constructed. Because it was not constructed, the answer to question 30 is false. Moving on to question 31. Poor town planning is a major contributor to climate change. Poor town planning is bad planning of city and town designs. Contributor is cause. So, this is what we are looking for. Causes of climate change. Poor town planning causes climate change, and it is a major or main cause of climate change. If all these match the passage, the answer is true. This is where we found the answer to the previous question. Urban means cities and towns, which is mentioned later in the same paragraph, and climate change is also mentioned. This says because unsustainable or bad urban or town models or planning are a key cause or a major contributor of global climate change. So we get the answer from the first half of the sentence. All the points in the question are correct according to the passage. So the answer to question 31 is true. Moving on to question 32. In Renaissance times, local people fought against the changes to Piacenza and Ferrara. Piacenza and Ferrara are places. During this time, there were some changes here, and the people who lived here fought against these changes or opposed these changes in some way. So maybe they protested against them or they tried to stop them in some way. Renaissance is mentioned many times in the passage, but only one paragraph mentions Piacenza and Ferrara. Also, we found the answers to questions 30 and 31 in paragraph 3. So the answer to question 32 should be after this. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 4, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. Reconfiguration and expansion means changes. Renaissance men could mean local people, but prominent Renaissance men means important people. So then we are not talking about the local people. We are talking about some important people of that time, maybe the politicians, leaders, rich people, etc. So they are not local people. Pushed forward means supported. This is the opposite of fought against. This is a tricky question. If you miss prominent, you may think this means local people. Then the answer would be false. People did not fight against, they supported the changes. But the passage says prominent people, the important people supported. What did the local people think? We don't know. It is not given what the local people thought of the changes. Changes happened, some people liked it, but it's not the local people. So we don't know what the local people thought. We don't know whether they tried to stop these changes. So the answer to question 32 is not given. Moving on to the next question, question 33. Leonardo da Vinci kept a neat, organized record of his designs. We are looking for how he kept his papers and notes in a neat, organized way or in a messed up, unorganized way. This is where we got the answer to the previous question. Design is mentioned in the same paragraph, but notes and sketches are mentioned in the next paragraph. Notes and sketches could mean the records. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 5, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. This clearly says his disordered or his unorganized way of working with notes and sketches. That is, his records were not organized. So the answer is false. But there are a lot of words that could confuse you. Designs are mentioned in paragraph 4. Then later in paragraph 5, papers are mentioned, which could be the records. Then easy and clean are mentioned, which are synonyms of neat and organized. So to get this answer, we need to know that note and sketches mean the records and disordered means unorganized. So we can see that his notes and his drawings were messy and not organized, which is the opposite of what is given in the question. So the answer to question 33 is false. Here are the answers to all the true false not given questions and their location in the passage. Many words like 500 years ago and Piazza helped locate answers easily. But some words like 15th century and Renaissance caused confusion because they are mentioned many times in the passage. It helps a lot that the answers to these questions are in the same order as the information in the text. We now start with the next set of questions, gap fill questions. The answers are in the same order as the information in the text. We identify the keywords that help in locating the answers, such as capitalized words and numbers. Then we scan the passage for the tentative location, read and understand the question closely, and find the answer. We find the exact words for the answer in the passage. The instruction of how many words are allowed is important. In these questions, only one word answers are allowed. Let's look for location keywords first. There's Ticino River and 19th century. These should be easy to find. Also, we may find words like canals and earthquakes easily. We can see these words in paragraphs 5, 7, and 8. So we have the tentative locations of the answers. Let's start with question 34. There are two sentences. Only the second sentence has blanks, but the two sentences are connected. Also, the information in the first sentence will be there in the passage before the answer. The question says Leonardo da Vinci made a design for a new city next to a river. We know about this from some paperwork. This design was to make something better or improve something. This something was to help trade and reduce pollution. We have to find what this something is. Let's compare this to the passage. This sentence tells us about the papers with design, and the new city beside Ticino River is mentioned. The next sentence is he designed the city for easy transport of goods and clean urban spaces. Clean urban spaces are less polluted environment. Trade is buying or selling of things or goods. So the answer comes from easy transport of goods or better transport of trade. The answer to question 34 is transport. Question 35. Again, there are two sentences. The second one has a blank. The first sentence says that Da Vinci believed in some things that most people believed, the ideals of the time. But some of his ideas were different. Then it says they included features. They means the innovative designs. The designs had some features which are there in some tower blocks or some tall buildings now. We are looking for an example, a feature which is something outside a building. This is where we found the answer to the previous question. The next paragraph mentions some of the words from the question. Innovations, outdoor, which is the same as exterior, high-rise building, which could mean the tower blocks. But there are some words in the fifth paragraph too. Towers and high strong walls, which could have something to do with outdoors. But after the 34th answer and before the 35th answer, we expect this information. So we look for the answer in paragraph 6. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 6, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. Let's compare the question to the information in the passage. Consistent with ideals is shared the ideals of his time, Innovations are mentioned here. So the answer has to be from the next sentence. The information in one sentence in the question is in two sentences in the passage and in reverse order. First, we have outdoor staircases or exterior mentioned, and then the tower blocks or high rise buildings are mentioned. So, one of the features that Leonardo designed was staircases outside the building or staircases on the exterior of the building. The answer to question 35 is staircases. Moving on to question 36. Here also we have one sentence without a blank before the question. It mentions architect and then canals are mentioned. This is where we found the answer to the previous question. Architecture and canals are mentioned in the next paragraph. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 7, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. The question says Leonardo was an architect. He was also an expert at something or very skilled at something else. And we know about this skill because he made plans for artificial canals. What is the second thing he was an expert in? Vision means plans or ideas or designs. Fusion means combination of two or more things. This says his vision or ideas were because he combined architecture and engineering. Then it says he designed canals. So the second thing he had an expertise in was engineering. The answer to question 36 is engineering. Moving on to question 37. This has two keywords, earthquakes and Italy. The question is that Leonardo said there should be a relation or a connection between the height of houses and the width of streets. This would help if there are earthquakes. Then it says many cities in Italy follow this blank. Let's compare this to the passage. It first mentions the width and height. Then it says a rule still followed in many cities across Italy. It's not exactly active and passive voice, but it works in a similar way. The design in Italy follows this rule, or a rule followed in Italy. An important word here is contemporary, which means modern or happening now. So many cities in Italy follow this rule. The answer to question 37 is rule. Moving on to question 38. It mentions the word death. We don't see any mention of death, but after this question, 19th century is mentioned. So the answer to question 38 should be before 19th century. So we are expecting it from this sentence. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 8, and in green color, each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. The question says some cities from some period or time have features from Leonardo's design, but his ideas were used many years after he died. Some important things we need to find this answer. Death is not mentioned, but 19th century is mentioned. In the beginning of the passage, it is mentioned that he died 500 years ago, and 14th and 15th century are mentioned. So we know that the 19th century was many years after he died. Put into practice means applied or used. Also, the information in one sentence in the question is in two sentences in the passage, and there is a lot of extra information in the passage. Features are aspects. So some features existed in Roman cities, which means cities from Roman times. And then this part of the question is mentioned later in a different sentence. So the answer to question 38 is Roman. Moving on to question 39. This is one example of a city means this is a city, which means we are looking for the name of a city. Envisaged means imagined or planned in the mind. The question says that this city was redesigned or rebuilt or designed again in the 19th century according to the way Leonardo envisaged or planned or imagined. The question is asking for the name of the city. Let's see what the passage says. An important reading tip. These are dashes. The information between dashes is additional details. So if you find it difficult and the sentence is long, cross out the part between the dashes. Understand the rest of the sentence first, then understand the part between the dashes if it is relevant to the question. Here it says the subdivision of the city by function, and then this part is explained. This is not what the question is asking. Another important concept is that 19th century means 1801 to 1900. This concept was also important for answer 30. So in the passage, the word example and 19th century are mentioned before, but the answer is later. 1853 to 1970 are the 19th century. In 19th century, Paris was renovated or Paris was redesigned. So the answer to question 39 is Paris. Moving on to question 40. We found the answer to question 39 at the end of paragraph 8. So we will look for the next answer in paragraph 9. These are the meanings of some words from paragraph 9, and in green color each sentence is explained. You can come back to these if you have difficulty understanding any part. The question says, Leonardo's ideas are important even today. Then it says, now, building something is not considered the best approach or method. So, building what thing is not considered good now? The first sentence of the paragraph says the same thing as the first sentence of the question. His ideas are relevant. The answer is spread over this paragraph with a lot of extra information. This says building upwards is more efficient, which means it is good. So, building outwards is not considered efficient, which means it is not the best approach. Efficient and sustainable means good approach or method, which is upwards. Outwards is not a good approach. So the answer to question 40 is outwards. Here are all the answers to the gap fill questions and their locations in the passage. These were slightly difficult. One important concept was that the 19th century means which years. Another thing was that for most answers, the information in the passage was spread over 2 or more sentences. Question 40 was especially difficult in this regard. With this, we are done with all the questions of Book 18, Test 2. We'll continue with more IELTS related content in future videos. Bye for now. Hope this helped you. All the very best.